The last Sunday of that long, humid summer, the air in the dining room stuck to my skin like a clingy shirt. Cicadas hummed outside the window, a steady drone under the clink of ice in tumblers and the scrape of forks on plates. Her mother had made fried chicken, slick with oil and effort, and the kind of potato salad that always tastes like childhood and mustard. On the surface, it was just Sunday dinner, loud and familiar, like so many I'd sat through since I married into the Westbrook family. But the chairs were arranged like an audience, and when I sat down, her father took the head of the table as if he meant to hold court. I've always been slow to anger, slow to speak, a man who likes screws straight and edges square. I grew up in a place where you help your neighbor move a sofa and you wave at the same dog-walking couple every evening. I fix things. It's who I am. But that night, I kept my jacket on, even in the heat, because in the inside pocket was a stack of paper that whispered against my shirt, like a secret I'd stopped being willing to keep. "Ben," her father said, his voice warm and sticky. "We need to talk about family." Lila's hand found my knee under the table and squeezed 3 quick pulses I knew by heart. A code for "we're in this together," a code that used to melt me. It still did. But it also braced me. A promise had been made to me long before that dinner. Not the kind you get from a minister in a chapel, although that had been part of it. A quieter promise. The kind you make to yourself in the quiet between sleeping and waking, when you decide what kind of man you're going to be. I swore I'd never let anyone use love as a crowbar to pry open my wallet or my spine. I had learned that from my mother's hands, from the way she rubbed lotion into the cracks beneath her wedding ring after my father left and never looked back. We bend for the people we love. We don't break. "Let's eat first," I said, and I smiled because that was the role I'd been written into a good sport. A helpful guy, the one who got the generator running when the storm slapped the power out the month before. I cut into the chicken and told myself that there would be time for the rest. I met Lila in line at a farmer's market just after sunrise in spring. She wore a denim jacket with frayed cuffs and a red scarf knotted in her hair, and she was flipping through a crate of peaches like they were a deck of cards at a casino. The vendor said the fruit was still hard, needs a few days on the counter. Lila laughed and bought them anyway, held one to her nose like a flower. That scent green and sweet and possibility got under my tongue and stayed. We walked with coffee along the river, talking about nothing. How sometimes you can tell if a storm's coming by, how the air tastes. Why dogs hate fireworks, whether the people on boats wave because they're friendly or because they're showing off. I told her I built kitchens for a living. The kind with drawers that don't slam and lighting that makes everything look more forgiving. She told me she worked at the museum gift shop but wanted out, that she was learning photography in the slant of afternoon light. The Westbrooks were everything my little Ohio upbringing wasn't. Loud, tangly, dramatic. They lived in Savannah in a house that leaned toward the street like a gossip, with an oak in the yard hung with Spanish moss like shawls. The first time I met them, her mother swabbed my cheek with her thumb to get a smudge she said was pure bachelor. Her father slapped my back so hard I saw stars. Her sister, Bree, hugged me like she'd known me since kindergarten and then borrowed my truck to pick up a Craigslist dresser. It was returned with the gas light on, and I drove home with my seat slid back. Someone had adjusted everything in a way that didn't quite belong to me anymore. I minded, and I didn't. That's the truth. It was chaotic and charming, and Lila, with her long hair tucked behind one ear and her camera always at the ready, made the chaos feel like music instead of noise. She did that. She framed what was mess into art when we moved in together. I found myself making pasta at midnight because she had gotten lost in a photo and forgotten dinner. I patched the ceiling where a leak had darkened it like a bruise, and she kissed the scratch on my forearm and said, "You're made of good wood, Ben." There ought to be a stamp for it. We got married in late fall in a park with trees that had the grace to turn gold at the right hour. It wasn't fancy. We invited the people who would show up if our sink exploded, and the ones who had held our hands in urgent care more than once. My mother cried. Lila's mother cried louder. Her father danced with her to a song I'd never heard but have not stopped hearing, the chords of it stitched into the seams of that day. You build a life like you build a house. You pick a spot that doesn't flood. You check what's under the paint before you sink your savings into it. Quietly, carefully, I suggested we sign a prenuptial agreement. It wasn't romantic. It was, to me, no different than checking the beams for rot. My mother had taught me that too. Love is how you treat each other when you're tired. Trust is the way you leave the tools out and know they'll be there when you need them. Lila didn't love the idea. Her family loved it even less. "We're not those people," her mother said, exhaling spice and perfume. "Who needs a contract for love?" "It's not about love," I said, as I do when I'm trying to convince someone to wear a seatbelt. "It's about being kind to the version of us that might have a bad day. It keeps our families out of our marriage. It keeps our choices ours." In the end, Lila came to the law office with me. She wore a red scarf again. She signed, I signed, and we went to a diner where the waitress had a tattoo of the moon phases circling her wrists. We ate pancakes and wiped syrup off each other's fingers with napkins so thin you could see the imprint of our fingerprints through them. And then we forgot about the paper, or maybe I did. It slid into a file cabinet in my small office at home, next to the manuals for appliances and warranties for things no one ever registers. The Westbrooks, despite their protests, had always treated me like a walking solution to problems they didn't want to look straight at. Bree's car needed brakes. Her father's friend could get me a deal, couldn't he? The roof at their place leaked. Could I patch it until after the holidays? A cousin needed somewhere to crash for a bit while he figured things out. Our spare room was perfect. The ask was never cruel. It was just constant. At dinner, her mother would slide a bowl of macaroni toward me with a smile full of meaning and say, "You wouldn't believe the bank fees." A few days later, I'd see a pair of shoes in their haul that cost a month of those fees. When I suggested a budget, the silence at the table was a new kind of loud. Her father chuckled. "We just aren't spreadsheet people, son. I learned to swallow certain things. I learned to breathe through others." I watched Lila, who could find a half-beautiful angle of a broken alley, try to be too many bridges at once. She translated her family's wants into polite requests and my caution into gentler phrases, and she got tired. I saw it in the way she rubbed her temples when her phone lit up with her mother's special ringtone, a chime we'd chosen that sounded like bells and came to feel like a warning. Then the calls changed. The tiny bleeding of need turned to a slow hemorrhaging. A letter arrived addressed to Lila, thick and serious, from a law firm in a city a few hours away. I found it on the kitchen counter beneath a grocery list. Lila had read it already. I could tell by the half-moon crease where her thumb had pressed and pressed. She stood at the sink, staring through her reflection at the window like if she wished hard enough, it could become a doorway. "What is it?" I asked. "Our family," she whispered. "My family." She brought the letter to the table, and we sat with it like it was a cat that might run if we moved too fast. It spoke in the bland, heavy voice of institutions. It used her full name. It mentioned accounts I'd never heard of, balances that sounded like a joke, and phrases like past due that do not belong in love stories. There were more letters. Another stack a few weeks later. A call I happened to pick up when she was in the shower. I listened and understood that this wasn't new. This was old, and it had finally staggered into the light. We ate soup that night, our spoons making quiet chimes against the bowls. Steam rose and fogged my glasses, and I lifted them to the top of my head like a man too tired to be vain. Lila cried without sound. I took her hand and said, "We will figure it out." I meant us. I did not mean the people who had put us here. The thing about money, what it does more than buys or counts, is that it reveals. It shows you what someone values and what they hope no one will notice. It shows you who thinks of the future and who thinks the future will save them if they insist on it loud enough. It was clear, as we made calls and wrote down names and dates, that some of the debts were older than our first kiss. Some were newer and uglier. A line of credit in Lila's name taken out the spring before our wedding. A card with her name on it mailed to her parents' address. Purchases that looked like weekends and didn't look like groceries. "Bree," Lila said, as if the word were a prayer and a curse. She looked through old texts on her phone, the ones with heart emojis and photos of Bree's cat sleeping in sun rectangles. She scrolled and scrolled. The pattern was a kind of art, the kind with white space that says as much as the paint. She called her sister and spoke in a new voice, a voice that had steel in it. My wife, the woman who once apologized to a spider as she put it outside, used words that were not soft. She did not yell. She did something harder. She told the truth. Bree cried. She said she was sorry and she didn't know how to stop. Then she blamed. Then she circled back to sorry. The call ended with promises that sounded like a rain forecast on a sunny day. You want to trust the science. You also trust your bones more. We went to Sunday dinner with our spines straight and our hearts bruised, and we tried to do what decent people do. Be honest, set lines that protect everyone. We said there were debts. We said they were not ours. We said we would help find options, counselors, lawyers. We said we would not be the bank. Her mother's mouth turned down like a hinge pulled too hard. Her father's jaw set. Bree's eyes went bright and hard like marbles. "You don't tell us how to live," her father said, and he laughed. The way some men laugh when they want to show teeth without calling it a snarl. "Your family. Family takes care of family. We are taking care," I said, keeping my voice to the level that doesn't scare the neighbors. "We're taking care of our marriage." He leaned back in his chair, the wood creaking under a weight that had nothing to do with pounds. "You married into this. Her debts are your debts now." That was the first time the word demanded came into the room. Not spoken, but there, a cloud of it. A demand is different from a request. A demand says you owe me without having done the math. It says you must because I say. It says love equals compliance, which is not love at all. The next week, her father called me at work and left a message that began with "man to man" and went downhill from there. Her mother showed up at our door with a casserole and a folder. The casserole had too much cheese, and the folder had printouts from the internet and a list of people to call to get this squared away. People who could make the past vanish and restructure obligations. None of it had a line that said take responsibility. I kept my jacket on at dinner because my skin felt unstable without a layer. The talk, when it came, wasn't a conversation. It was an ambush decorated with lemonade. Her father laid out the bills like a dealer lays out cards. "This is what it is," he said. "We're not asking forever. Just until we get our feet under us." "And how long is that?" I asked. "When do you stand up on your own?" He scoffed. "Don't be dramatic. You've got plenty. It's not like you'd even feel it." Her mother says you're good with numbers. Be useful. Lila's hand tightened around my knee. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking at them with a face I didn't recognize, as if she'd seen a magic trick performed too many times to enjoy it. There's a point in every build where you either shore up a bad beam or you tear down the wall. Either can be right. Either can be brave. I reached into my jacket, felt the paper's cool edge, and pulled it out. I set it on the table with the same care you place a baby on a blanket. No flourish, just gravity. Her mother's face went to war with itself. "What is that?" "It's our prenuptial agreement," I said, and my voice didn't shake, which felt like a small miracle. "The one we signed before we got married." "Oh, her father started, but I held up a hand. "A request, not a command. A plea to hold still." "I don't think we should do this," Lila whispered, but it wasn't fear in her voice. It was sadness. It was mourning for the version of family that doesn't require paperwork in a dining room. "I think we have to," I said, not looking away from her. "Not to hurt anyone, to protect us." I slid the top page free and read, not the legalese. The lines I had insisted on and she had agreed to when we were soft with pancakes and sunlight. The language, blunt and unpoetic, that said debts incurred prior to the marriage remain the sole responsibility of the incurring party. The clause that said, "Third parties shall not make demands on marital property for debts not jointly authorized." The sentence I had argued for with the calm of a man who knew his own boundaries. Number funds from either party shall be used to pay obligations not jointly decided upon in writing by both spouses. I lifted my eyes and said it plain so no one could pretend they hadn't heard. Her family demanded I pay her debts. I read the prenup out loud. Not a cent. Her mother made a sound like a tea kettle left too long on the stove. "You're going to hide behind paper?" "I'm going to stand behind my wife," I said, and felt, for the first time in that house, the floor under me stop shifting. "She doesn't owe you her credit, and I don't owe you my work. You are loved. You're not entitled to take from us because you want to. We will help you find help. We will not pay what you took." Her father stood up so fast his chair skittered back and bit the wall. "You self-righteous dad," Lila said, and the word cracked. She stood too, but she didn't move toward him. She moved closer to me. "Did you open an account in my name?" Silence is a character in every family. It has moods. That silence was guilty. That silence wanted to be anywhere else. Her father looked past us, out the window where the oak moved in the breeze. He lifted his hand and rubbed his jaw like that motion could conjure another answer. He did not say no. Bree started to cry. Big, messy tears. It was me. I needed... Her eyes flicked to her parents, then back to her lap. "I thought I could pay it back." "I thought you had." She swallowed the rest. "What did you think I had?" Lila asked, and there was a new sound in her voice. A strength that made my ribs feel too small for my heart. "A man who could fix things," Bree said. She said it like a compliment. She said it like the plan had always been this. "Your sister is sorry," her mother said, pressing a napkin into Bree's fist like a credential. What you need is a plan that does not involve my husband playing hero for choices he did not make," Lila said. "What you need is to stop asking me to carry your consequences like a purse." Her father's mouth opened and closed. He did not apologize. He said, "Well, if this is how it is, I guess we know who you married." "You do," Lila said. "A man who doesn't confuse love with rescue." I didn't need to win. I needed the truth to stay in the room long enough not to be gaslit back into the hallway. I took out the next thing in my jacket, a letter from the credit bureau where I had placed a freeze on Lila's credit after the second round of surprises. A printout of a counseling program that works with people who've dug holes deeper than they can climb out of alone. The name of a lawyer who doesn't mince words about identity theft when it happens inside families. I wasn't bluffing, and they knew. You can hear it when someone stops negotiating with you and starts negotiating with reality. Her mother's shoulders were trembling. Rage, grief, maybe both. She pointed at me with the hand that still wore the wedding ring she polished with toothpaste to make it shine. "You're breaking us. You broke us every time you expected me to say yes to something that was wrong," Lila said. And then she faltered. Tears filled her eyes like storms that finally decide to break. "I love you, but I have a husband. And the life we're building doesn't have a line item for your emergencies anymore." Bree sobbed harder. Snot and tears and mascara smudged into something honest. "I'm sorry," she said to me, to Lila, to the table. She reached across the table for Lila's hand and stopped halfway. Her fingers curled in on themselves as if she'd touched a flame and couldn't keep going. "I'm sorry," she said again, to her shoes this time. Her father didn't say he was sorry. He took the papers I'd laid down, flipped through them, looked at me like he'd misjudged the weight of what I could carry. "So that's it?" he said. But it wasn't a question. "That's it," I said. "And it doesn't have to be the end of us. But it's the end of this." We didn't stay for dessert. On the drive home, the city felt like a stage after closing. The streetlights hummed. Lila watched the blur of the moss in the headlights and didn't speak until we pulled into our driveway and the motion light clicked on, bathing the porch in soft gold. We sat in the quiet and listened to the engine tick hot to cool. "I knew," she said finally, voice so thin I had to turn my face to catch it. "Not all of it, but I knew the shape of it. I thought I could cover it. I thought I could be two people. I'm sorry." "Hey," I said, and reached for her. My thumb traced that patch of skin on her wrist where her pulse flutters like a secret. "You don't owe me sorry for things you didn't do. And for the things you did, I forgive you. We're here. We won." She laughed, but there was no joy in it yet. "It doesn't feel like winning. Winning doesn't always feel like fireworks," I said. "Sometimes it feels like sleeping through the night because your phone didn't explode at midnight." In the weeks after, winning felt like paperwork and quiet. We met with the lawyer and the counselor with chairs that were softer than they looked. Lila put her credit on ice and thought a new way of speaking to the people who loved her by habit and hurt her by asking. Bree went to meetings and learned the difference between guilt and responsibility, which are cousins, but not the same thing. She called Lila and apologized again. Not with tears this time, but with sentences that had subjects and verbs in a future tense. She asked for forgiveness, and Lila gave it with conditions, the way you hand someone back your trust in pieces to see if they can hold it without dropping it. Her mother didn't call for a while. When she did, it was late afternoon on a Sunday. I grilled chicken that had been marinating all day in something citrus and patient, and the air smelled like smoke and hope. Lila talked to her mother on the back steps, her bare feet on the wood I'd sanded smooth. They spoke for a long time. There were pauses where a third person might have said, I can't, and hung up. They didn't. When Lila came inside, her face was wet and beautiful. She leaned against me and laughed the way you laugh when something is funny and not, all at once. She asked if she could bring potato salad next weekend, she said, and if we could talk about a budget. She said she doesn't know how. She asked if we would forgive her for not listening before. What did you say? That I do. That we do. With boundaries, with respect, she kissed me. That I'm her daughter, not her parachute. We didn't throw a party to celebrate. We bought a basil plant and put it in the kitchen window. We reclaimed our Sundays. We watched movies so old the credits looked like they were written by hand. I taught Lila how to fix a leaky faucet, and she taught me how to notice when the light through the blinds looks like zebra stripes on the couch. We ate pancakes on a morning when the air came in off the river soft as a friend's shoulder. We slept through the night. I wish I could say her father came around. He didn't, not immediately. The thing about men like him is that pride is a religion, and repentance feels like blasphemy. But spring turned to summer, and summer leaned into fall. He missed a birthday, and then a Thanksgiving. He didn't call, then he did. He didn't apologize, then he did. He came over with a pie he hadn't baked and eyes he hadn't let rest. He stood on our porch and shifted his weight like a boy called to the principal. I was wrong, he said, and the words were small and huge. I did what I thought I had a right to do because I'm the dad. I forgot that being a father isn't a card you play, it's work. Can I, he swallowed, can I ask you to forgive me? Lila's hand found mine. We are, after all this, still the people who move toward love even when it requires a map. We're trying again, she said. Different this time. He nodded and looked past us into the house, as if it were a museum he remembered loving. You got any of that lemonade? He asked, and we all laughed at the shape of our story, the way it can circle back and look new if you're willing to see it. Forgiveness didn't erase what had been done, but it sanded the edges. There were still moments of overreach, and there were apologies sooner now, before bitterness hardened. Bree sent receipts of her counseling appointments the way some women send workout selfies. Proof of effort, a little bit of pride. She learned to sit with the discomfort that comes from not asking someone else to lift your backpack every time it feels heavy. Her mother brought potato salad and took home leftovers in containers we didn't expect to see again, and were surprised when they returned. There were days I felt like a man who had been handed a medal I didn't want. I would prefer a life where papers don't need reading out loud at tables where food should be the only thing we pass. But I will say this, I am proud of the beam I became. I didn't splinter. I didn't make my love smaller to make someone else's appetite look like care. There is a picture Lila took of me the morning after that Sunday I didn't know she was shooting. I'm in the doorway of the workshop out back, squinting into the day, a coffee mug in one hand, sawdust caught in the hair on my arms. The light hits me in a way that makes me look like the man my mother raised me to be. The caption Lila wrote when she tucked it into a frame on my desk is simple and honest. It doesn't mention contracts or demands or the night the air tasted like a storm that finally decided to break. It just says, you made us a home I can trust. If there's a moral here, it's not the kind that sits nicely at the end of a children's book. It's this: love without boundaries turns into hunger that eats what it should protect. Saying no when no is the right word is not cruelty. It's the gate that keeps the wolves out and the lambs inside. And for us, for now, with a basil plant on the sill and a porch that smells like citronella and whatever's on the grill, it's enough. It's more than enough. It's us, and we are good.
Subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts about the story in the comments. See you in the next one.